As the investigation unfolds, some former FBI and Secret Service agents have pointed to multiple failures that allowed the shooter complete access in what should have been one of the most secure areas of the country at the time. Mark Morgan served 20 years in the FBI and was a SWAT operator where he worked very closely with Secret Service for countless special security events. Mark, good morning to you. Thanks for joining us as always. It is being one of the most significant U.S. security breaches in decades, called that. The shooter was on top of a building about 130 yards away. How did this happen? What are your sources telling you?
First, Jan, as you have been talking about all morning long, my hearts and thoughts go with the innocent victims of this senseless, heinous act. The experts across the board, including myself, there's no daylight between us that this was a colossal failure on multiple fronts. But, you know, before I do that, I do want to talk about at least something positive that happened. And that was the immediate reaction of the Secret Service agents that were directly around the president. You saw them in a millisecond throw themselves on top of the president. At that time, they had no idea whether the threat had been eliminated, whether there were multiple threats. They were literally risking their lives. So let's talk about some of the positive as well. But look, make no mistake. I think what's frustrating for me, Jan, right now is there's so much we don't know. Yeah. There's 1,000 different possibilities where failures occurred. For example, was there a failure on the advanced site survey? Was this a building identified as a vulnerability? That's something we don't know for sure. We've heard rumors. In addition to that, usually a building like this in the outer perimeter more than likely would have been assigned to a local or state or federal agency to protect. We don't know. We don't know if that assignment had been made. We don't know what they did. We know that we've seen that rally goers saw this individual on the roof. They alerted police. Why didn't police see that? What was the response afterwards? We don't have those answers. As far as the counter sniper teams, we don't know what they saw, when they saw it, and could they have taken a shot earlier? Those are questions we don't know. And the last thing I'll say, Jan, is the Secret Service methodology, protection methodology, they can't eliminate all risk. But in this case, a building that close to the president, where the president was speaking, this should never happen.
Mark, sources did tell NBC News the roof where that shooter was located was a well-known, high-priority vulnerability that was, in fact, identified the day before. Now, that's according to their sources. The big question, though, how did the shooter go on top of that building in his tactical gear and an AR-15 and not know he was going to be met by Secret Service agents and perhaps counter snipers? Do you think he had some assistance with someone at the event?
Again, all good questions, Jan. We should be angry. We should be outraged. We should be frustrated. We should be asking these exact same questions. The reality is, I'll keep going back to that, there's so much that we do not know. And as far as the sources, I think those sources are probably accurate. I just cannot believe that this building was not identified as a potential vulnerability prior to the event. Yeah, I'm confident that it was swept, and it should have been locked down, and there should have been no access to this. Right. But as far as whether the shooter was acting alone or not, we don't know. The FBI was reporting that there's no indication they had help. But right now, the FBI is going to be pouring over every aspect of this guy's life and will let him up to that. But there's still so much we don't know.
The disbelief you have is the disbelief so many Americans have, and so many former law enforcement agents, Secret Service agents have. There are reports counter snipers clearly had their sights on this suspect before taking him out. Why would they wait? Is that protocol?
Well, again, Jan, I'm going to keep saying this. Those are rumors we're hearing, but we don't know. We haven't heard from the shoot. We haven't heard from the team. We haven't heard from Secret Service. It's very important. But here's the protocol. The protocol for them is the same it is for any federal agent, the same it was for me for 30 years of my service. They have to have the perception that there's an immediate threat of serious bodily harm or death to the principal or any innocent bystanders. That has to happen. So what we don't know is what they saw at the exact moment in time. When did they see that weapon? When would they perceive that imminent threat? There's a lot of unanswered questions there. It's just hard for me to wrap my hand around that they didn't see the gun until after the shots had been fired. Those are legitimate questions, and I have the same frustration. But Jan, there's just so much we don't know. And here's why I'll go back to what you said in your monologue I heard. We should be hearing from the director of Secret Service. The fact she has not been out there is unconscionable.
Mark, what's happening behind the scenes when it comes to the FBI? Because we know they've taken over the investigation. What do we expect we're going to learn about the suspect?
Oh, I think we'll know everything about this individual's life. And Jan, you and I talked about this before during active shooters. Here's one thing: even though we're hearing right now that this being, it's trickling out, which I don't agree with that process, is that he acted alone. I still think there's a lot we don't know, but I'm confident. Here's what we're going to see: is there's going to be what we call leakage. There's no way that this individual, if he acted alone, that he didn't say something to somebody, a mother and father, a family member, a friend, an associate, a coworker. It just doesn't happen that way. He just didn't wake up Saturday morning and say, hey, I'm going to climb on this rooftop and try to assassinate the former president. There had to have been some form of leakage somewhere along the line.
And as you've said, it was well planned, well executed. Former Acting Commissioner of Customs and Border Protection, Mark Morgan, and veteran FBI chief, thanks for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, Jan.